stories of issues that started back in the 80s and the 90s, but I would say really in the mid-2000s, between 2006 and 10, is when the behavior started affecting his work to a certain extent in terms of lateness on set, and then as Ms. Jacobs, his talent agent, discussed with you in her deposition, it really started to affect her ability to get roles and the industry's willingness to work with him given the issues that he was having with both behavior, tardiness, drinking, and the drug abuse, and other issues in his personal life. So it got more complicated for her to find him work, and I think it got harder for production companies and studios to hire him due to the challenges that would put on a production.
And when did Mr. Depp's career downturn begin, based on your review of all the record evidence?
Well, again, according to Ms. Jacobs, his agent, she mentioned that it started getting more challenging for her around 2010. The lateness on set was being made, she was being made aware of that more and more often from production executives and the producers that she was working with on the Pirates movie. And not only Pirates, it continued on the other films, including Mordecai and Murder on the Orient Express. And in around 2014, when he had the appearance, it was presumed that he was under the effects of alcohol at the Hollywood Film Awards in 2014.
Objection, Your Honor. Non-responsive.
She's answering the career downturn, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Please continue.
Thank you. In 2014, when Mr. Depp appeared in the Hollywood Film Awards, Ms. Jacobs received many phone calls from both producers, casting directors, and production executives asking her what is going on with your client, why, what's going on with his behavior, can we get him under control? And then I think it really started to shift around the Pirates 5 movie in Australia with, again, the lateness and the issues with the finger that stopped production and things of that nature, and then it got harder and harder.
Now, based on your analysis, what has caused Mr. Depp's career downturn?
Objection. No foundation.
Overruled.
Can you please repeat the question?
Based on your analysis, what has caused Mr. Depp's career downturn? And I realize you've said a number of those, so just, is there anything else?
Sure. Well, we've talked about the erratic behavior, the tardiness, the drugs and alcohol abuse, and the lawsuits have had a really big impact, not just this lawsuit, but previous lawsuits that Mr. Depp has been involved with, because there's a lot of publicity around anything that he does. And every time he has filed a lawsuit, it has brought to light various issues with respect to whatever that lawsuit was about, whether it was about, erratic behavior or domestic abuse or drugs and alcohol and even spending habits. So every time a lawsuit has been filed, the press and the publicity has just been charged up and brought everything back to light. And it's been an unfortunate problem on that level for the industry to continue to work with him, even though all this is out in the public.
For the films that were shortly before Pirates 5, how successful were they? We're talking Mordecai, Alice Through the Looking Glass. I think you testified to some of those. The Lone Ranger, Tonto.
Right.
Objection. Compound.
Overruled.
Of course, Mr. Depp has had some obviously extremely successful films, but also in the 4 or 5 years prior and, through Pirates, there were films that didn't do well at all and were considered what the industry calls a bomb, which could have been Alice Through the Looking Glass, The Transcendence, the Lone Ranger, and Mordecai were films that just didn't perform, although they were valued in their financing based on Mr. Depp's star quality and acting ability. Unfortunately, they just didn't perform. So as many hits as he's had, he's also had a lot of recent, what they call failures in the business.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to showing up for a press conference in Japan for Mordecai?
Ms. Jacobs mentioned in her deposition testimony that Mr. Depp didn't show up for the press conference in Mordecai, which he was not only an actor for, he was also a producer, and he didn't show up. Apparently he was sleeping, so he wasn't able to make it.
Okay. Now, what, if any, impact did the Brooks litigation have on Mr. Depp's career?
Is the jury familiar with this already, or?
Well, I think you can, I mean.
Okay, so the Brooks litigation was, there was a litigation around Mr. Depp had punched someone on one of the, I think it was a location manager, on the set of a film called City of Lies. I don't know exactly what happened to that litigation. However, of course, again, it was written a lot about in the press, and unfortunately it came to the forefront that he had, violent behavior yet again.
So in 2018, and I'm going to say before the op-ed on December 18, 2018,
right.
Was there any negative articles, negative press about Mr. Depp?
For quite a while, when you're a celebrity such as Mr. Depp, you're in the limelight and everybody wants to look at everything that happens. So after every movie or after every incident, there was usually press. But the ones that were more significant were the ones in the Hollywood, a couple of them in the Hollywood Reporter and one in the Rolling Stone. So in 2017, there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter where the journalist discussed, I think the article was called Pirates of the Caribbean, The Diminishing Returns of Johnny Depp. And that Pirates, the last one was 5, right? And that one didn't perform nearly as well as the other previous Pirates of the Caribbean films. And there was some discussion that the character...
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I think you could explain generally.
Sustained.
Okay. Let me ask you this. When was that Hollywood Reporter article on diminishing returns of Johnny Depp?
That was in the spring of 2017.
Okay. And you said, and I just want to make sure we understand, how well did Pirates 5 do compared to 1 through 4?
It performed less well by over $200 million.
Okay. What, if any, other negative press was there in this time frame? We'll take 2017, 2018, before the op-ed.
So in 2018, there was the Rolling Stones article that was an in-depth expose on Mr. Depp's life. Again, his erratic behavior, the money he was spending on wine.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I think she can give generally, Your Honor, the negative.
Sustained.
All right. What, if any, knowledge do you have of whether Disney saw the Rolling Stone article?
There were emails between the publicity department and the co-chairs and some of the senior executive Disney that they would forward the articles as they came out, both the Hollywood Reporter article and the Rolling Stones article, and they would make commentary. And Alan Horn, who is the one of the co-chairs of Disney, used the word sad, and I think one of the other executives used depressing, that their film star was now being shown in this light to the public in a Rolling Stones magazine.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
All right. Was there any more articles about Pirates of the Caribbean prior to the op-ed in December of 2018?
There was an article in October 28th, the Hollywood Reporter, October 28th, 2018, where the journalist had spoken to 2 writers of the film, and they were talking
Objection,
about rebooting the franchise.
She's entitled to rely on hearsay, and she's just giving the general. She's not
approach.
So without saying what the article said, say what it's about.
Okay. So in October 28th, the article was about whether the Pirates of the Caribbean
Objection,
franchise
hearsay.
would be rebooted without.
Overruled.
Please continue.
In the article in October 2018 was about whether or not the Pirates franchise was going to be what they call redefined without Johnny Depp, and that was regarding two writers that were on the project.
Okay.
And there was one other one I'd like to talk
go ahead,
about.
please.
So there was another article, there was an expose on the president of production. It was also in the Hollywood Reporter. And this is the one that Mr. Marks, Mr. Depp's expert, pointed to regarding the op-ed's impact on Mr. Depp's career. And the online article was, as Mr. Marks pointed out, published on December 20th of 2018. But the same article was in print on the morning of December 18th, 2018, which is the same morning of the op-ed. So that Hollywood Reporter article that Mr. Marks used to say...
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Please continue.
Mr. Marks had used that article to show that Disney wanted to let go of Mr. Depp because of the op-ed, but it was actually printed in the Reporter the same morning that the Washington Post article was printed. So there's no way that the Washington Post article had any impact on what the Hollywood Reporter journalist wrote. So they were on the same morning. They were released simultaneously, interestingly enough.
And the one that was 2 days later was the same article, just online?
Same article, just online, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, what, if anything, was there about press in 2018 relating to The Sun and Dan Wooten and any litigation that Mr. Depp was bringing?
So a lot of press was about the UK trial in the lawsuit that Mr. Depp brought against the Sun in the UK about the wife beater title that they used. So there was a ton of press around that, both at the time that it was filed and throughout as documents were being shared with the public, and then, of course, during the trial itself.
Okay. And what is your understanding of when the article, the wife beater article, first appeared?
I believe it was in July of 2018, about 6 months before the op-ed piece.
And what is your understanding of when Mr. Depp filed suit against The Sun and Mr. Wooten?
Again, in 2018, I believe.
Okay. June, would it be? Would it refresh your recollection?
It was in the spring or summer. It was fairly shortly after the article, so it was long before the op-ed piece was out.
Okay. And what, if any, impact did Mr. Depp's litigation in the Sun case have on his career?
That was a really tough one on Mr. Depp's career, because every allegation of abuse and every text, every email, all the audio, all the visual stuff was brought to light and made public. And so not only did the public get to see it, but the industry was watching closely. And it's hard for studios, especially a studio like Disney, who's family-oriented, be connected to a star that has texts about burnt corpses and violent behavior in video. So it was a big conflict for a lot of the people in the industry to how to navigate that if they're going to work with a star.
And what, if any, impact did Mr. Depp's other litigation against Mandel and Bloom have during that time period?
As I was trying to say earlier, every time Mr. Depp brings a lawsuit, because he's such a well-known public figure, the spotlight goes on him. So every time a lawsuit was filed, whether it was to against his business manager, against his former lawyer, even when he fired his talent agent, it becomes news. And then everybody talks about what could have preceded that. Why would that lawsuit have happened? And then they look at the details. So again, the erratic behavior and the financial issues and the drinking and drug abuse was all part and parcel of every one of those, and it was brought to light yet again each time.
What is your understanding of Mr. Depp's claims regarding Pirates of the Caribbean 6 and how that impacted?
Well, Mr. Depp is claiming that he's lost money on Pirate 6, but Pirate 6 hasn't even been made yet, nor is there even a script that has been what we call greenlit, moved towards production. So I don't know how you lose something that hasn't happened. So I think that's what you're looking for me to.
And in fact, since Mr. Depp's damages are limited November 2, 2020 and nothing since, and that hasn't happened, Is there any way he could claim damages for Pirate 6?
Well,
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Again, you can't claim damages for something that hasn't even happened, whether he was in it or not in it, or was going to be in it, or might have been in it, whether it was 2018 or now. There just is no Pirate 6. Not only did he not have a contract even back in the day, 2018 or after that, no contract had been signed for a Pirate 6. It doesn't exist as we...
Objection legal conclusion.
I sustain the last part.
How do you know he doesn't have a legal contract?
Well, Ms. Jacobs said he didn't have a legal contract, and also his agents at CAA said he had not yet negotiated a contract for Pirate 6. And again, there is no script, so they haven't greenlit it, as we say. They don't have it cast or with the director yet.
Okay. Based on your analysis, what, if any, impact did Ms. Heard's op-ed have on whether Mr. Depp could claim a loss for Pirate 6?
Zero.
Okay. And why do you say that?
Again, well, many things. The movie doesn't exist yet, so that's one. But even as important is that Disney, in their file for this trial, did not have the op-ed piece as part of all of the information they had read and looked about and discussed. The conversations of Mr. Depp not being in whatever new version of Pirates, the franchise that goes forward, those were in discussions long before the op-ed piece even came out. And there are other factors that Disney was considering: the lateness on set, the cost overruns that costs, which can go from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars when you have crews sitting around for 2 to 4 hours, 8 hours, or even several weeks to a month when the finger incident happened. So on top of that, Mr. Depp is an expensive actor. He can earn between $20 and $25 million per movie plus back end. So it's very expensive. So when you put that all together, the rising cost of Mr. Depp's talent, the challenges that they had to keep it on budget because of his lateness and his tardiness, and all the other allegations that would affect a brand such as Disney, right? Someone talks about a burnt corpse, does not necessarily coincide with the brand of Disney. So there were many problems. And interestingly enough, there was a lot of conversation internally in the industry.
Objection hearsay.
She's entitled to rely on hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained. You can't say it's hearsay.
All right. Please continue without saying what the discussion in the industry was.
The Jack Sparrow character had been exhausted in terms of where it could go creatively, and I think the studio is looking for a way for it to renew the franchise, but not necessarily base it entirely on the Jack Sparrow character, which is where it had ended up the last couple of years.
Okay,
and evidenced by the lesser box office of Pirates 5 compared to the earlier ones.
Right. And was there any article that came out on November 5, 2020, 3 days after the damages are cut off, relating to Pirates of the Caribbean and Mr. Depp's chances of being Jack Sparrow?
I think they reiterated the fact that he was probably not going to be in the movie.
Okay. Now, what impact has the op-ed had on Mr. Depp's career?
Very little. Hardly anybody even knew the op-ed existed before he filed suit.
Okay.
If anybody that I know, but certainly not Disney.
Okay. And what impact has the op-ed had on Mr. Depp's Q scores?
According to what I read of Mr. Alan Jacobs, an expert in statistical analysis, and from my own research on websites that are available to us, Mr. Depp's Q score, or if you're familiar with IMDb, which is Internet Movie Database, which is available to public and to the professional side, his Q score did not change dramatically. It was kind of in the middle of exactly the high and low of his Q scores overall. It was in the middle. It was at like 113, which is where it was a couple weeks before and a couple weeks after. So the op-ed didn't have any effect on his Q score, and that was reiterated by Mr. Jacobs in his deposition testimony.
And then you testified in response to an earlier question I had that people, or that nobody seemed to notice the op-ed until Mr. Depp filed suit. Now, that was on March 1, 2019. Do you recall?
Yes, that's when the lawsuit was filed.
And why do you say that they didn't notice until then?
Because the op-ed piece, for most people in the industry, kind of came and went without much fanfare or much conversation. It was much more about I don't think very many people even know it was written until the allegations were made by Mr. Depp in the lawsuit. It kind of came in and out of the radar very quickly, if anybody even saw it at all.
All right. Between December 18, 2018 and November 2, 2020, our window here, has Mr. Depp continued to star in films?
So, Mr. Depp, the article the op-ed piece came out December 18 and 20 of 2018. In January and February of 2019, he shot a film called Minamata, which was an independent film that it was what we call a passion project. He loved the script and wanted to do it. So he was able to film that after the op-ed piece. And then the Dior campaign, Sauvage, I don't know the exact dates of filming, but I know that it did air throughout 2019. And it's my understanding that he still may have that contract with Dior, so he continued that product endorsement. And then in in the spring, and the fall, I believe it was, Mr. Depp was able to do press for the film Waiting for the Barbarians. He went to the Deauville Film Festival. He went to the Venice Film Festival. He was well received at the press conferences. You know, life was at the same level for him in terms of his popularity over in Europe. They were still, he was still working on press for the films. And then, of course, he was scheduled to film Fantastic Beasts in early November of 2020.
And that's no longer the case, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Can we approach?
Okay.
And that's no longer the case, correct, on Fantastic Beasts? I don't want you to say anything more than that. That's no longer.
It's no longer the case, correct.
He's no longer in that film, correct?
He was paid for it, but he does not star in the film.
Okay, thank you. Now, what, if any, effect did the op-ed have on Mr. Depp's fan following?
I don't know I don't think it had any effect on his fan following. Again, his Q scores didn't shift, and he clearly has a strong fan base.
In your opinion, what or who has caused the damage, if there is any, to Mr. Depp on his career and reputation between December 18, 2018 and November 2, 2020?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
Mr. Depp.
And why do you say that?
Well, again, filing the lawsuits, bringing to light the issues, is Mr. Depp doing that on his own accord? And any statements that were made by his team, Mr. Waldman or anyone else, is associated with Mr. Depp, and those statements that came out, the defamatory statements, which we'll talk about in a minute, were also put out by Mr. Depp's team. So in actuality, he's causing his own demise by bringing these lawsuits forward and continuing to kind of ignite the fire of negative publicity around both of them.
Okay. Are all of your opinions to within a reasonable degree of probability or certainty with respect to Mr. Depp's damages?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to move you to Amber Heard's damages. With respect to Amber Heard's claims for damages, on what subject have you been asked to offer your opinion?
So I was asked to look at the reputational harm and economic loss that Ms. Heard incurred due to the defamatory statements that Mr. Waldman, on behalf of Mr. Depp, made in April of 2020 and again in June of 2020.
And what materials did you review in forming your opinions?
again, many of the same materials that I reviewed for Mr. Depp's case, which was the deposition testimony, the pleadings, the discovery, all of that was included, as well as expert testimony that was based on statistical analysis of negative social media campaigns that were created, as well as what happened. I talked to Ms. Heard's agents. I read their depositions. I talked to her publicist. I read her deposition. I talked to Ms. Heard herself to get a first-person accounting of what happened from her perspective after those defamatory statements were made. And then I looked at the, again, emails back and forth and texts back and forth with the studio, Warner Brothers, and other producers that the management team is working with to get Ms. Heard more work.
Okay. Now, before I go into the questions that I'm going to ask, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of define this so that we're all on the same page going through it. The jury has seen the 3 defamatory statements. They're defendants 1245, 1246A, and 1247. And I'm just going to refer to them as the Depp/Waldman statements in asking you all these questions. Will you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, good. Please describe Amber Heard's career prior to the publication of the Depp-Waldman statements.
So Amber's had a long career for someone who is not, is fairly young still. She was in over 50 productions, I believe including Aquaman and Justice League, but let's just say close to 50 productions. Well, certainly 50 productions before the defamatory statements were made. She had, a consistent working actor's career. Her agents were strategic as she started getting more work, that they wanted her to work with better and better directors, to have, the Danish Girl is a film that had a strong director and a strong critical acclaim. And then she went from that to getting Justice League, which is on the bigger budget, is the bigger scale movie, and then of course Aquaman and Aquaman 2. So her career was following a very nice steady rise, and she was on the precipice of a meteoric rise with with Aquaman and Aquaman 2 prior to the statements.
Was Aquaman a successful film in terms of box office sales?
Aquaman was an extremely successful film. It made over $1 billion, and I believe it is the highest grossing DC comic film ever.
Okay. Now, what, if any, accolades did Amber receive for her role in Aquaman? And I'm going to call it, sometimes I'll call it Aquaman 1 just to make sure we don't get confused. But.
Right. So in Aquaman 1, there were many emails from the director and the producer. And
Objection, hearsay.
She's just characterizing, Your Honor. She's not quoting them.
Well, I don't know where it's going. I'll overrule at the moment.
Thank you.
She got emails from the director and the producer stating that they loved her performance.
Objection, hearsay.
You can't say what the emails say, but you can summarize them or characterize them. Can you do that?
Accolading emails? Emails of accolade from her, from the director and the producer.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled as to that.
Thank you. Okay. What type of press opportunities did Amber have prior to the Depp-Waldman statements?
So the press really loved working with Amber. She was on the cover of many magazines after The Danish Girl, after Justice League, after Aquaman. She was the cover girl, I think it was, of Marie Claire or Elle in the UK. She had a cover story of a big magazine in Mexico and Australia. They were, one magazine called her Woman of the Year, another one called her Role Model of the Year. So she got a lot of press. She did a lot of press, both in magazines, but also on the press tours and the press junkets that she did for the films.
And were some of those California Style, Marie Claire, Elle, Shape, Glamour?
Yes, there was a lot of them.
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
There was a lot of them, so I'm not, don't remember all of them, but it was, GQ, Elle, Marie Claire, the big magazines, both here, the UK, Eastern Europe, in Latin America, and in Australia.
And what about after the release of Aquaman, which was December 2018? How was her press then?
Well, the press tour was doing well, and they wanted to give her a lot more press. And I think up until the defamatory statements came out, she was on deck to do a lot of press. And then it
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Please continue.
So the press and the request for press went silent after the defamatory statements were made, and which then the negative social media campaign ensued after that.
Now, what factors relating to social media does the entertainment industry rely on when considering an actor for a role?
Social media becomes a big part of how studios decide to use an actor or an actress in a film, because they want to know how the general public feels about them. They want to know what the consumer feels about that actor. So when there's positive social media, that's a good thing for the actor. When there's negative social media, it can be very bad, because not only can social media be directed at the actor or the actress themselves, but it can also be directed towards the movie, towards the movie company, towards the product that the actor or actress is working with. So it becomes very complicated, and it can get very messy to continue working with an actor or an actress if there's a lot of negative social media around them.
Okay. And after the Depp Waldman statements, what happened on social media?
After the Depp Waldman statements, social media blew up with negative tweets and Instagram posts and, Facebook posts and Snapchat and trolling, as we call it. It was just negative. According to Mr. Schnell, there was over 1.2 million negative tweets about Amber using hashtags that used the words in the statement of the Depp Waldman statements, that 1.2 million negative statements between April of 2020 and November or January of 21. It's a lot of negative publicity, and there was just a lot of what we call noise around Ms. Heard and her work of any kind.
Can you please describe to the jury what a negative social campaign is?
So a negative social campaign would be when a fan base, or in this case, according to both the forensic statistical analyst as well as Ms. Heard's agents and the product that she was working with, L'Oreal, and her publicist, it was a campaign that included both live accounts, live Twitter, people that actually are individuals, as well as what we call
Objection. May I be heard?
All right, here I come.